Please, meeting call to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Giovanangelo?
Here.
Mr. Jim?
Present.
Mrs. Wolford?
Here.
Mr. Scapora?
Here.
Mr. Baldneri?
Here.
Mr. Forish?
Here.
Mayor Griffin? Present. All present. Madam Mayor, members of council, before we start into tonight's meeting, there has been advertised a public hearing. Item number 1 under Administration and Finance is an ordinance we will consider that will affect parking rates and fines. By virtue of the Home Rule Charter, anytime there is an increase in service rates, public hearing must first be had. It's been advertised for this evening to commence at 6:30. So with that, if there is anyone in the audience that wishes to address proposed ordinance regarding changes in parking rates and fines, now will be the time to do so. Would you please go back to the microphone at the rear and state your name and address. Going once, going twice, done.
Mr. Solicitor, is the microphone on?
Which, my microphone? Or?
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, okay. Is that only for public comments, or is that, are we, can the...
Well, whenever the matter is brought up for discussion under the agenda item, obviously council has the right to discuss any motion. But this would be for the a public hearing, basically for the citizenry comments.
I wonder, does anybody have any questions on the $10 fines that they propose?
Yeah, we're just trying to get up to the microphone.
We change that.
Yeah. Skip Bollinger, 314 St. Clair Street. About the fines, if the people would pay the meters and not park illegal, they will not have to pay a fine. Simple as that. Illegal parking, you're going to pay a fine. So whatever the price is, what it should be. And we felt the rates that were started in, that's what it should be. You had a study done, and in the study, the rates were even higher for the fines.
Skip, what do you do about a person that isn't attempting to beat the meter, but just happens to be held over in a situation, perhaps at the doctor's office, or maybe had to stand in line at the dollar store, and they come out and find it, now they have to pay a $10 fine, and really they feel like they haven't tried to do anything wrong, but they accidentally have done something wrong.
I mean, right now it's a $3 fine, and I hear there's a lot of problems. People don't even want to pay the $3 fine. I mean, if you slug the meters like you're supposed to, there shouldn't be a problem.
Well, I was just pointing out that particular instance that we're going from $3 fine to a $10 fine. I just wonder if there's isn't some intermediate situation that $3, but if you don't pay it within 24 hours, it goes to $5 or something such as that. Are you speaking, by the way, on behalf of the Parking Authority?
I'm speaking as a citizen.
Okay. And as a Parking Authority, want to make a comment?
Yes. I think these fines are very relevant based on what the market is today. You've got other cities. I worked in Indiana for several years. $10 was not out of the question. You put money in the meter. When I go to the doctor, I know I'm going to be there a while. So I put 2 quarters in, or 2 3/4 in. It's very simple. If you're going into Rite Aid or anything, you can park for nothing. If you're going into the dollar store, I've never been in there that the lines have been that absorbent. You put 10 or 20 cents in and you're safe. These fines actually should have been more, but particularly when people park in front of a fire hydrant or a handicap space. There's no reason for it. There's plenty of parking in the whole city. If you're parking in front of there, initially we started out at $100, and we reduced it to 50. Otherwise, these fines are I think they're within the market today.
Marty, I wasn't talking about parking in front of a fire plug. I'm talking about a person that goes into Danny Pastry, perhaps, and happens to overrun their meter by 2 minutes and gets a parking ticket. These are the people that I'm concerned about.
I've done that myself. For 2 minutes and gotten a parking ticket. I mean, what are you going to do? You pay the fine. It's very simple.
But you paid a $3 fine.
No, in Indiana it was $5 5 years ago.
5 years ago, is that your last fine that you paid?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever paid any in Latrobe?
No.
Have you ever run over the meter in Latrobe?
Yes.
I see. But you didn't get a ticket?
No, I was out within seconds after.
I see.
But it's I mean, you put money in, so if I get a ticket, I paid it. There was no question answered. You pay your tickets. You put money in the meter, you don't pay.
Marty, what's your thoughts on the parking over at the hospital if you come out and you're 10 minutes late because you had to wait till the doctor come in to talk to you?
Hospital sets their own rates.
Well, it looks like you're setting the rate. It's $20. It's $20 in this. Are we setting the rates or are you setting the rates?
The parking authority does not set the rates for the hospital garage.
Well, I believe it's contained in the ordinance, isn't it, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, it is. It's in the ordinance. We council set the rates. Parking authority recommends.
I think that $20 rate is pretty high at the hospital.
It's $10 at the hospital. It's the same at the hospital as it is downtown. Mr. Molina, we all know you, but for the record, would you just state your name and the position you're speaking from?
I'm sorry, Marty Molina, Chairman of the Parking Authority in the City of Latrobe.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals who wish to offer comment at this time?
Jim Bolton, 225 Irving Avenue. I was going to wait for the audience response here. To begin with, it pertains to parking. I think council should take a second look at Depot Street between Ligonier and Jefferson. I think you have stuck the traffic and created a traffic hazard by attempting to make a couple quarters on some parking that I never seen anyone park there. Traffic coming down Jefferson Street, they're not going to sit at that light and wait to make a left-hand turn when they can go to the curb lane and make it right away. I know from personal experience sitting at that light that I seen a pickup truck and a car behind it coming down the left lane. Fortunately, I had my turn signal on, they stopped before I made the turn, but I was prepared to go straight ahead. The other thing I could think when I made that left-hand turn and had a pickup truck follow me and go into the post office, the individual probably said, "Look at that dumb yo-yo making a left-hand turn from the center lane." Somebody's going to make a left turn from that center lane, and someone's going to be coming down that curb lane. You're going to have a collision if you haven't had one yet now. I think, my own personal opinion, I'm not a traffic engineer, put that street back the way it was 40 years or more of the way people were accustomed to. You have the same problem down here, Chestnut and Jefferson. Unfortunately, you don't have that much traffic that's making right-hand turn to go down to the stadium and parking lot. Second thing real quick pertaining to your parking, how far are you going to go with your meters? The whole length of Ligonier Street, there are only 3 metered spaces on the western side. And I think they're a half a block, in my opinion, out of the commercial zone. And they're in front of the Latrobe Boulevard. Seems like you got a vendetta against the local paper. And I thought the paper has been extremely kind to you over the years. You gonna continue on up and put meters in front of Payne and Dumont, Kinley's? I know you think this $10 raise in parking meter violations, raising the rates. I hope you think this is not gonna get you out of your financial hole that you're in. You raise that ticket to $10, you aren't gonna make any money. If your meter attendant can write at least 400 tickets a month, that'll cover her salary and fringe benefits, maybe. There has to be some other means you're attacking, I think, businesses. I know people shying away from downtown. If you're a professional, lawyer, doctor, dentist, whatever you might be, how do you notice that there's a hell of a lot of buildings that are being built on the townships here with free parking, with the people in the same profession? When is it that you're gonna leave too? I just can't see getting out of a hole trying to use parking. How you're gonna pay for this, I don't know. I can't wait to a certain extent till December to see how you're gonna balance next year's budget. You've overspent this year with a deficit budget that's guaranteed. The next year's gonna be interesting, and the year after that's gonna be even better yet. There has to be some other means of cutting corners and paying your bills. As again, I'm not a business owner anymore, but I can appreciate some of these people that do have businesses in town here trying to make it. And if they have some of their clients getting $10 tickets, it's not much, I know. But some people go off the deep end. They've never had a ticket in their life. Now they're coming up with a $10 ticket. Your city manager is the one that's going to take the year beating. But I think you ought to start looking deep into how you're going to finance things. Thank you.
Mr. Bolton, I have a question for you. You mentioned about the north side of Depot Street, or excuse me, the south side of Depot Street between Ligonier and Jefferson. Have you seen those parking spaces ever filled, or what's your?
No.
Most I've ever seen is one car. There's still plenty of slots across the street in the meters there.
I saw a truck there one day.
That's all.
And I saw a car that the trunk was open. I don't know whom that belonged to.
I've never seen that filled.
I'd like to say something. I'm sorry, Mr.
Well,
Bolton.
I'm asking him, do you mind waiting? Can you wait?
Like I said, I've only ever seen one vehicle there. But in the meantime, I think you're asking for trouble. Someone's going to click together, making that left-hand turn onto Jefferson Street. I really do believe it. Because when I've gone down Depot Street numerous times, the amount of cars that are making the left-hand turn from the curb lane, every time just about. Someone's going to turn into somebody.
Mr. Bolton, we do have, I think, Pango parking there. Perhaps the manager can come up with an amount that we're taking in between Ligonier and Depot Street on the Pango parking. I think that the system is sensitive enough to do that. Is that correct, Alex?
No, that is not correct.
Oh, it's not correct. So we can't find out whether there's been more than one car.
Well, I can't see in my travels down Depot Street where if you're making a buck a day on those lots, I'll be surprised.
Two comments. One, you're not supposed to make a left-hand turn from the center lane. That's illegal. That's a straight lane. The left-hand lane is for the left-hand turns. The left-hand lane has been painted for the left-hand turns. The parking is only permitted to a certain amount. There's about 3, maybe 4, I'm not sure, Joe, you might be able to correct me, spaces for cars to make a left-hand turn. In other words, we created, it's called stacking space. And it's typical in most towns. You have stacking space. You have it on other blocks on Main Street, which Main Street has blocking from Jefferson all the way to Alexander. You have stacking spaces for those turn lanes. don't make a turn from the center lane on Depot. Make the turn from the left-hand lane where there's stacking spaces for you to do that. That's part of it. The other reason we did not install meters there and created a pay-go only is because we might be looking at replacing all the meters in town. If we do indeed replace all the meters in town, for the 3 or 4 months that we had them on Depot Street, it wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense to do that equipment install when it may not be necessary depending on the equipment we purchase. So there's a number of issues. We're certainly monitoring it. One of the issues obviously is that Depot Street, when it hits the Lloyd Avenue Bridge, is a 1-lane road. And so the thought of having multiple lanes in town in order to get out of town breaks down when you get down to the Domino's Pizza, where it goes back to a 1-lane road. So I would encourage anyone who's making a left onto Jefferson to please make it from the left-hand lane and not the center. And maybe if we are able to buy the meters, we'll be able to install some meters there. Those are just some observations. There will be peak times where the town's slower. Now that's just the nature of things, whether that's a rush hour or however you want to call it. Other than that, for the most part, as we've been monitoring it, it's got its peaks and its valleys. There's some times where you drive right through town, you don't see anyone.
I just wanted to make one comment. The reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but I think the reason that we did that wasn't just for the sake of making some money. It was to satisfy some of those businesses there on Depot Street, and in response to our small businesses trying to help them along, that was more the reason than it was just making a couple bucks. Am I correct?
Councilman Wolford, that is correct. In fact, there are 2,000 parking spaces approximately in the downtown. 1,000 of them are provided by the city and the parking authority. The other 1,000 are provided by the business owners like Rite Aid, who have acquired enough land to provide parking for their patrons and their customers. So in fact, 1,000 spaces are provided exactly for the businesses, like for example, some of the banks in town who don't have parking for themselves. We're providing it as a service on behalf of the city for those businesses and their customers. The $10 fine is to discourage freeloaders. The $10 fine can be lowered to $5. I would imagine at the end of the day, whether it's 5, 3, or 10, my ears will be beat, and I appreciate your concern for me, Mr. Bolt. Maybe you can say a prayer for me on some of these days. But nonetheless, it's all meant to protect the businesses, to allow the customers and the employees to be able to count on having spaces and to get what they pay for.
Just briefly, nobody wants to talk about it. Heard some comments, numerous comments. The best thing to do if you're a non-profit in Latrobe is to buy an old building, tear it down, make a parking lot.
Mr. Bolt, this is a public hearing to comment upon an ordinance.
It's on
not
parking.
the
All
general.
right, like I said, I was going to avoid that. You know what I'm talking about.
Mr. Bolt.
No, I just wanted to address a couple of points Mr. Bolton made. One is there's no such thing as free parking. You may think it's free, but you're paying for that parking through the goods and services those business offers. If you're going to the mall, if you're going to Rite Aid, wherever it may be, there's no such thing as free parking. And another thing, Mr. Bolton, I have to take exception with the comment you made that we're running at a deficit. Every year, this is my 7th year on this council, we've balanced our budget, we've had a surplus at the end of the year, albeit it's not as much as we've liked it to be. However, we are not running at a deficit. Thank you.
Like I said, I'd be interested in seeing your next budget.
I had one more comment about the parking on the north side and south side of Depot Street. I don't see the turn arrows. I don't think the people realize they can get into that lane and make a left-hand turn.
We'll look to do that to make it better marked through whether it's a signage, turn from the left-hand lane only, and we can look at it again on the painting.
I wonder if Chief Bumar, do you have any comment if you found it looks like a satisfactory solution to have those meters on that south side, or are you still opposed to that?
Well, I'm still opposed to it. However, the problem that we're running into is the solid line. When there's a solid line, that tells an operator that he cannot cross it. So if he's coming down the center lane, he remains in the center lane to the red light and makes the left turn. You can't have a solid line. That designates, that's...
The solid line does not go beyond the parking spaces.
I think we're putting cones up to control the traffic. It's my
It does, it goes down to the end.
observation.
We have cones at the intersection of Depot and Ligonier because you're not allowed to make a left-hand turn from the left-hand lane on the Ligonier because it's a one-way street. And so there are cones on both sides of that corner there. There are none down in the Jefferson Street corner. But I agree with you, Councilmember Jim. We certainly always have to look at what cues we're giving the drivers for safe driving. I would caution all motorists. This is a pedestrian-friendly town. They make many crossings at intersections. Please drive safely.
We have another comment, I believe, Ms. Reed.
My name is Peggy Reed. I live out in Unity Township, and I spoke on this issue last month. I have heard from other people from out in the township. They definitely are not in favor of this parking. I myself am not in favor of it. This was a town that was a very friendly town when I moved here back in the early 1950s. We didn't have all these problems. I understand progress means that we have to make decisions. But, for instance, the Depot Street. I have a dentist on Depot Street. To get a parking space, it's almost impossible. And then, for somebody who is handicapped, like I am, I can't walk across Depot Street as fast as maybe a young person. It makes it very, very difficult. And I don't know, I have to watch whether they're coming down Depot Street, whether they're coming off Ligonier Street. And when they make that turn off Ligonier Street, some of them are ready to go as soon as that light changes. It is very, very difficult. People out in the township, and I've heard this even from a couple of our doctors, they think that this is really terrible what we're doing as far as the parking is concerned. The rates are too high. I know we have to pay for things, but when you come to getting these $10 tickets, that is no fault of your own because you're held up in some place of business. That's not quite cricket, especially for your seniors, because we're living on fixed incomes, and I know we all live on a fixed income. I've heard this tale for many, many years, but it is very difficult to try and keep going. Thank you.
Let's see, there was one question I have. I wonder if I could ask it during the public meeting. Alex, a citizen has asked me that lives on the south side of Spring Street between Ligonier and Alexandria, and we have parking meters there. That is their home. Now, I understand that do they have to pay for parking in front of their home because there's a meter in front of it? What does the ordinance say? Let me ask the solicitor. Do they have to pay for parking in front of their home because there's a meter there?
If the meter is there and they park there, I don't care who parks there, they have to put the coins in. Now, the ordinance does provide for passage for people who are in the downtown area. I'm not sure if this person's property would fall in that area. There are, I believe, monthly passes they can purchase.
Excuse me, you say you don't know whether or not they have to pay for, that's not considered the downtown area?
I'm asking, where's the property again?
It's south side of Spring Street between Ligonier and Alexandria.
It's in a residential area as far as I know.
What you're telling me?
I think the question is whether the meter needs to be there.
No, the question is, according to this ordinance, are you going to charge them to pay for parking in front of their home because there's a meter there?
Currently they would, and in the future they would. As it was noted, they could bypass for $15 a month.
So we'll be charging.
Again, council determined where those meters would be placed, and council can, at its discretion, remove the meters from there as well.
All right, but they are there, and if they overpark, they're going to have to pay $10 fine. And what kind of meters are there? Are they 1 hour, 2 hours, or 9 hours?
2 hour.
2 hour meter. I see. So both are working, they have a 2 hour meter, they're going to get a $10 fine.
Well, if they're working, they wouldn't be home unless they're working out of their home.
I don't
And after 5, that wouldn't be a fine.
Actually, though it's not in the ordinance, our ticket person quits at 4 and begins at 8 and Weekends are free.
Well, that was what the individual asked me, what they would have to pay to park in front of their home if there's a meter there. And you're telling me it's going to be 75 cents for 2 hours, according to this ordinance. Is that right, Mr. Solicitor?
Whatever is stated in there, I'd have to open it up and look at it again, Mr. Jim. Give me a moment. I find the ordinance.
What's it?
I'm waiting for it.
It would be $1 for 2 hours at a short-term 2-hour meter.
No, at a 2-hour short-term meter, orange, 25 cents for 30 minutes. So that would be 50 cents per hour. $1 for 2 hours, correct. 50 cents an hour, $1 for 2 hours, Mr. Jim. Does anyone else have a comment at this time under the public hearing? Hearing no further comments, Madam Mayor, the public hearing would be declared to be closed.
I have a motion for approval of the minutes from the August 13, 2012 meeting, please.
Wait a minute. Okay. Did we do roll call on that? Jeez, I'm so lost.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I move the minutes of the August 13, 2012 meeting be approved and accepted and be permitted to remain on the Secretary's desk where they will be available for reading and inspection to anyone.
May I have a second?
Madam Mayor, I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Of approval of the fiscal department reports and paid bills for the month of August 2012. May I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I so move.
Mr. Ballneri, second.
I second, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Ford. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Citizens' request? Committee reports. Martin, want to say anything else?
Yeah, I've had some people call and want to know about reserved parking, which we're going to have. So maybe we ought to get that into the paper that there will be reserved parking spaces. I've had several people inquire about that. And also regarding Depot Street to Jefferson, that solid line goes the whole way to the end of that block.
Yeah.
So I think people are confused because I've had people ask me, well, we're turning, but I can't get over in that lane. So we were taking your life in your hands if you're going from the left center lane. So I think that dotted line or turn thing must go in there.
If that is the case, I stand corrected and we'll paint it tomorrow.
Okay, because people have asked about it, so. And I've had a lot of other comments regarding the garage in itself, and people seem to be happy with it. It looks very nice. I think people did a nice job. The fence is up now, so everything's kosher. The elevator will be in December, as I recall, hopefully. They've ordered the parts or whatever they need, so. And our stairs has been very clean lately. We've had some problems with those stairs in the past. And Rolling Hills is now cleaning the place, they're sweeping up. So they're back doing it, and we'll get the window guy. He does the windows like once a month. So everything is starting to shape up and fall back into place. Thank you.
Board or authority reports? Department reports? Mr. Brazil? Chief? Umar?
We're in the process right now of becoming a central booking station. We've began to receive some of our equipment. It should be going into effect in the next 3 to 4 weeks. We're waiting on the state to come in to put the NCIC terminal in. And if anybody has any questions about it or wants to go over it, they're welcome to stop in my office, and after the meeting I can explain a little more.
Madam Mayor, members of council, before we move into the action items, you will find under subsection B2 a proposed resolution authorizing an easement to Unity Township Municipal Authority for a sewer line. There are representatives here from Unity Township Municipal Authority to basically offer some explanation regarding that easement. So I would ask, so that they could go ahead and leave after their presentation is done, if we could move that item up on the agenda, and we would put that ahead of subsection A, Administration and Finance, after their explanation.
Is it all right over here? You have the drawing. I'm Mike Henry, I'm the manager of Unity Township Municipal Authority. This is Kevin Brett, our consulting engineer. We provided this handout. And basically the handout shows in yellow the homes that are affected. What happened, the authority was notified in February by PennDOT that the Mission Road Bridge, going by your public works facility, that bridge is going to be totally removed in early 2013. What the authority has on that bridge, it's actually a county bridge.
Mr. Henry, it's to be removed
And
or it's to be replaced?
Removed and replaced, excuse me. All right, thank you. But we have an existing sanitary sewer hanging on that bridge currently. Our agreement with the county back in 1978 stated that if the bridge was ever removed, it would be the authority's responsibility and cost to reroute that sanitary sewage. Currently, that line conveys sanitary sewage from about 29 homes in Unity and your public works facilities located there on Mission Road. I guess we came tonight because the fact that time is the essence. We would like to have the project completed by the end of November, no later than December. That bridge is going to be let in December. We're not sure when construction would start. I thank Jim, Alex, and Joe for working with us, and hopefully through those meetings and telephone conversations, we've answered most of their concerns. I'll turn it over to Kevin Brett, our consulting engineer, in regards to the proposed routing and costs associated with that. I will say this, the authority plans to pay all the costs associated with the relocation of that line.
The next sheet in your handout is 11 by 17, has a big stripe across it, blue stripe. The blue going across the page is from top to bottom. Top of the page is north, that's Little Hannah Creek. The green running parallel with the Little Hannah is the proposed route of the new sanitary sewer. After we met with PennDOT about 4 or 5 months ago, we looked at 5 different routes in order to reroute the line off of the bridge so that we could be removed prior to them demoing the bridge and the line could stay active. We looked at going on the west side of the bridge, and when we did our survey across the stream's eroded to a point where it's about 3 foot below the existing LMA interceptor. So we could not get connected into the interceptor on the lower side of the bridge. So we looked at 3 different locations on the east side of the bridge, the Mission Road Bridge. Again, there was so much erosion in the Lower Hannah, it's well below the existing LMA interceptor. Therefore, we couldn't get across and connected into that. Then we looked at 2 overland options. The one that was the least cost is the one in green, which goes through the Latrobe property. We also looked on the south side of the existing public works building at a route, and that was about $100,000 more because of the depth and the amount of ore that was necessary, and it was trouble getting the houses reconnected in at that location. So the only route that, after looking at 5 different ones that became feasible, was running alongside and through the public works yard on the bottom side. Any questions on it?
So if you want to build back there, something like that, you can't build on top of that.
You would not want to build over it, but the location that we put the line in, there's 2 other utilities currently in that same area. We're running parallel with both the electric and the water. So that area right now already has utilities in it, so we wouldn't be encumbering any more area than what currently is.
Mr. Brett, the presence of the utilities that are currently along that line, would that negate any future building in and of itself?
They would need relocated if you would build a building there. There's an overhead power line, and then it's actually your water line leading back to your facility. Runs in the same area. We've avoided both those, but they would need relocated if you would do a building.
How far would you be going off from that, as far as 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet?
About 5 feet off of the water line. And we're not very deep going back through the route. It's around 4.5, 5 foot deep.
Joe, if I'm not wrong, there's a road, or it's an unused road, but a roadway down in that area.
There is a roadway right there, and that is a part of our action plan along with our DEP permit.
The reason I asked the question, would there be substantial difficulty if a roadway were paved? You'd obviously have to break the roadway to get in to repair the line. That would be no different than any roadway in Union Township or in Latrobe for that matter. Do you see that as a major issue, that the city would reserve the right to pave over that area?
No, the line is designed to be paved.
Yes, we don't have issues with paving there. So you're gonna be under that roadway?
It runs along the edge of it currently. And if you wanted to pave over it, you could. Because the roadway right now is just basically grass. You can see where you could put a roadway, but you could pave over it.
You guys put some indication or pop up as if you want to build something back here?
You wouldn't want to put a building over top of the line itself. If you decided to put a building in, you would relocate it around wherever that building would be. It's just not a good idea to put buildings over top of the sanitary sewers.
But the roadway isn't an issue, and the ones that are under the existing roadways now are bedded in gravel. There's no increase not required.
Is that roadway currently used? Is it used, Joe? The roadway that we're talking about, it hasn't been used in years. It's not an issue at this point. Is there any anticipated use of that?
Well, there's been discussion about expanding the transfer station. Then there's been discussions on perhaps leasing the transfer station. What becomes of that area? I mean, it all depends on what's in our future.
Okay, but as it now stands?
As it now stands, it is not being used, but it has to be there for emergency entrance and exit according to our DEP permit.
Thank you.
And we also included in our drawings and will be in our specifications back in the area that we cross this year compactor. The contractor has to do that work during hours of non-operation so that we do not shut down that facility during that construction of that sanitary sewer.
Mike, right now we are tapped into that line in one area. Could you explain to council about the 2 taps that would be needed along with this project?
Yeah, currently you have a force main coming from your pump station at your compactor. It's a small pump station that pumps right out to the manhole right in front of the bridge there on Mission Street. That manhole will actually be removed as part of the bridge construction. We show that when we put the new line in, we will reconnect that force main to keep you in service during construction and in the future. And we're also going to provide a lateral for your public works building to connect. And that is no cost to the city. The total cost of the project is about $160,000 to be absorbed.
Joe has another question, sorry. Joe, sorry.
Just so council understands fully, they will be making the connection for the compactor, the force feed. And as Mike had said, they would provide a lateral. In other words, coming off of that, I believe you said 13 feet?
Right.
13 feet. Just so council is aware that we are approximately 200 feet away from that connection. In other words, that would be our responsibility.
This would improve the matters then.
What he's saying is that Public Works or a contractor that we may hire would be responsible from tapping our existing sanitary sewer line and running it about 200 approximate feet to the new line being constructed by the UTMA.
And you will be on the LMA customer, not a Unity Township customer, or authority customer. Our agreement with LMA, Deary, and Youngstown is any line within our political boundaries, the other political entity has the right to use. And whatever political entity that property is located in, that's whose customer you would be. In this case, you would be an LMA customer, Latrobe Municipal Authority, not a Unity Township Municipal Authority customer.
You're not going to bring the lateral up to our building?
We were not planning to do that, no, sir.
You planning to give any remuneration to the city for going across our property?
We were hoping with the cost that we have to pay and the fact that we're providing the city sewage, that you would provide the right of way in order to facilitate that relocation of that sewage.
You want it for free, right?
Well, we would like the right of way at no cost, that's correct, sir. And the fact that we're also, the city would not have any place to put their sewage currently if it wasn't for the relocation that we have to perform.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Otherwise, I have the resolution, which we have moved up in the agenda. And I will go ahead and read that resolution. It is a resolution authorizing the granting of a sanitary sewer easement to the Unity Township Municipal Authority on city garage property. And whereas the Unity Township Municipal Authority has requested that the city of Latrobe grant a certain 15-foot wide right-of-way and easement for the installation of a sanitary sewer line along property owned by the city of Latrobe, upon which is located the city garage and transfer station. Whereas the council of the city of Latrobe desires to grant such easement or right-of-way, now therefore be it resolved, Section 1, that the city of Latrobe hereby grants to Union Township Municipal Authority an easement for the construction, operation, and maintenance of a sanitary sewer line facility is fully set forth on grant of right-of-way and easement attached as Exhibit 1, Section 2, that the location of the easement is set forth on Exhibit A attached to the grant of right-of-way and easement. Section 3, that the mayor, city secretary, city manager, and or any other proper city officer are hereby authorized and directed to execute the grant of right-of-way and easement agreement and to take any and all further action and or sign any and all other documents required to carry into effect the provisions of this resolution resolved in council this date. And I might add, the easement that is attached does provide for the ability to pave over the easement area for any roadway. It provides for the ability to install a pole building, which can be removed fairly easily if repairs have to be made. It does provide that any other buildings to be erected or constructed over the easement area would have to be done by agreement between the UTMA and the city. The motion would be to adopt the resolution as outlined by the solicitor.
May I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I so move.
Mr. Baldner, second.
I second it, Madam Mayor.
Ms. Wolf? Any more questions or discussion?
I have one question.
Use your mic, stop.
I have one question, Madam Mayor. Here, looking at these notes here, is proposed force main to be installed and reconnected by Latrobe Public Works?
No, it'll be reinstalled. We'll correct that. It's going to be installed by UTMA. We always had planned to reinstall your force main. Reconnect.
All right.
Good.
Anyone else? More questions, discussion? Any more?
This is resolution 2012-48. Mr. Forish. Mr. Forish.
No.
Mr. Scapora.
No.
Mrs. Wolford.
Yes.
Mr. Baldner.
Yes.
Mr. Jim.
I abstain.
Mr. Giovanangelo.
No.
Mayor Griffin.
No.
Vote is 2 yes, 4 no, motion fails.
The only thing I could ask council is that the fact that if you do not provide the right of way, or the other option for us is to build a pump station on the other side of the road, it just increase the amount of cost. And also my concern is, how are you going to convey your sanitary sewage after the line is routed?
Why no? I don't understand.
I mean, you don't have it, I mean, you'll have to bear the cost to get it across the lower hand, unfortunately.
Can somebody say why they're opposed to it, and maybe we can figure out a resolution?
I mean, we looked at all different alternatives, and there was just no place else for us to go. This is an expense that the authority had no idea that was coming until February. And the line itself basically provides sanitary sewage not only for the township, but for the city. I know one of the biggest concerns of the city was that the transfer station would not be out of service. But in order to facilitate that, you have to have some place for your force main to go.
If I'm looking at this, isn't this right across the major traffic area of our crusher down at the bottom there? But you're coming right across our major traffic area for us, that's why I'm saying.
Yeah, we have noted that that section of that sanitary sewer can only be installed after your normal business hours at your facility.
So you would not be down.
What about repairs later on? We don't, that's coming through, that's right now you're talking about doing us at night, putting it in there. But any repairs would have to come later. We'd have to shut our facility down to allow you in there to repair. They're coming right across our major traffic area for our crusher.
We will ensure that your crusher and your facility is operational during the construction of the line and the rehabilitation. We'll put everything back to the original condition as it's stated in the right-of-way agreement.
I don't understand, excuse me, Madam Mayor and Council. I don't understand, if you had these questions prior to our vote, why weren't they asked? If you had objections to this, what were your objections and why weren't they addressed? I find it unconscionable that we take exception to our fellow municipal authority here who's providing us with a service to vote against this in the manner in which you have without addressing your concerns.
I got asked before about encasing it in the cement line. Now, any of our trucks, would they not crush that line at all?
No, Kevin, you can answer that question probably better.
Yeah, the line in the trench is designed for HS-20 loading, so it's meant for truck loading. And in your area where your facility is, that's going to have full stone backfill, and then your current surface goes back the same as what it is today. So the line's meant for loading.
I mean, we have to be good neighbors. I mean, this is just, I don't understand. I agree 100% with Kenny. If there are concerns or issues, we need to discuss them before we vote. I know that's too late, but maybe we can do it again. But Joe, do you have an objection to this at all?
My only objection to this would be that I would like to see, as part of the project, us to be connected in, by us I mean the Public Works Department, to be connected into that at no cost to us.
What we could do in that regard is we could provide the pipe, but we do not have a backhoe. You have a backhoe, and my staff would assist Joe and his staff, but we can provide the pipe.
Is that satisfactory to you, Joe? So,
Well, we still have a no vote, so I don't know what we're doing.
Mr. Kelly, could you read that resolution over again, so, like, about the pole building?
What? It was an imminent resolution. That was.
I'm sorry, I didn't say that resolution, I'm sorry.
It's in the easement, it's not in the resolution, but
It
it's
wasn't in
at,
the resolution. That was his addendum to the resolution.
But what it does is allow us to construct a pole building, and what he was saying was, which is something easy to remove if you had to make a repair, as opposed to a permanent structure. That was just a commentary.
the actual easement agreement, paragraph 1 on page 2, in connection herewith, the grantor, which would be the city, may use and enjoy the property subject to this right-of-way in such manner and for such purposes that it does not in any way materially interfere temporarily or permanently with the authority's right to install, construct, etc., etc., etc. Such usage shall include the right to cover the surface of the easement with macadam and/or concrete for a roadway. Grantor may also construct a pole building over the easement or such other building as may be agreed upon by the parties if needed, which can be removed for sewer facility repairs or replacement. That's in the easement itself.
For what it's worth, this isn't meant to be any sort of bias. I believe the municipal authority could enter condemnation proceedings onto a local government to acquire a right-of-way such as this if they deem it's the only feasible option.
And not only that, if we would not be more cooperative, we're going to end up having to figure out a way to tap into some sewer line somewhere for our transfer station anyways.
And it's going to cost us money.
You better believe it.
Where are we tapped in now, Mr. Bush?
To their line.
Currently, we are not.
No, you're not. I mean, you're.
We have a holding tank and a leach bed.
And we have the one that's a forced main coming from the compactor.
Well,
When the
that one.
compactor's permit, obviously there's, if you will, juices that get compacted out. Those get treated via a forced main to a manhole along that road. That's the one tap that they would make at their cost and their manpower while they're installing the line. The concern that Joe and I have is related to the other one. We currently have a holding tank and leach bed. If we were to make that tap, it would be city staff. Now we've heard the pipe would be for free and we would get assistance at the tap location, but we would be using our backhoe and time to dig that hole and you know, hopefully we don't hit any snags along the way. You know, it just goes smooth. If it goes smooth, it's a, I don't know, 16-hour operation, 2 guys, I'm not sure if that's a fair estimate. You know, that's just assuming we don't, again, hit something that we don't expect to hit.
Trees.
Because you have the option with your public works building to tap either out on Mission or the new line. But the new line would be much more convenient than going out to Mission. And to answer your question, currently your force main goes into the manhole right in front of the bridge, and that will be removed as part of the bridge.
Well, it's part of the bridge work. Where
That's
that
part of the
manhole-
bridge work. When the bridge comes through and they redo that, they gotta replace that.
Well, we have an agreement with the county, the municipal authority, that specifically states if the bridge was ever removed or replaced, that it would be the total cost of the authority to relocate that sanitary sewer. And the issue here is they're taking that span completely down. You have 29 homes plus your facilities that generate about 6,000 gallons of sewage a day. It has to be conveyed, pumped, or trucked during that construction period. And that doesn't include the cost that would be to replace that line back across that bridge.
And that manhole actually, that's where the new abutment goes, so that manhole goes away under their construction no matter what.
And unfortunately, pump stations would take months to be approved and they require backup generators, so the cost would go up significantly.
And I think Alex makes a good point about the fact that it could be taken through,
I may be
perhaps.
mistaken on that.
Is that possible? What do you?
Generally, as a rule, and there can always be exceptions, Ms. Wolford, and I haven't really looked at it, but as a rule, a body with the power of condemnation cannot condemn another body with the power of condemnation, because we could in turn re-condemn it back to them, and they could condemn it from us again. Vicious circle.
Yeah, the Municipal Authority Act changed in 2007. We do not have the right to condemn property in another political entity.
I stand corrected. I thought if they deemed because of the meeting their facility needs that it was required.
I thought we did too, but we checked. If it was private property, we could go through the condemnation process.
It's one of the things we had in conversation, let's put it that way, huh, Joe? You should have told me that before the meeting, Mike.
Mr. Kelly, is there a possibility that we can readdress this issue in a matter of
A
votes?
motion to reconsider can be made and seconded. However, the motion must be made by the prevailing side, which means in effect that the no votes that prevail would have to request that the matter be reconsidered at this time.
And I would greatly appreciate council if you would reconsider, because this is a project in regards to public health and safety that benefits both entities. It would be greatly appreciated. And we're up against the wall in the timeline.
What do you want to reconsider?
You can, Mayor. You don't want to reconsider?
I'll make a motion if you want to make a motion to reconsider. Second.
We would still need a second.
Anybody want a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Mr. Scapore.
We now have a proper motion on the floor for discussion.
Anything else?
Are the issues you had resolved to your satisfaction, council?
I would like to see some money to the city of Latrobe for this. That was one of my issues.
I can't speak for my board.
Since this was a prospect presented under condemnation, I wonder if we could have an executive session.
For the 200 feet for the tap in, they're coming through with an excavator to put the sewer line in the first place. Am I not correct?
Yes.
Yes. So for that excavator to run that 200 feet, I've done mainline sewer for years. And it's going to take them roughly 25 minutes, half hour to dig that line. Another half hour, 45 minutes to do all the connections, another half hour to backfill. I mean, 200 feet, there's no reason why we should not be able to have the tap in done for us.
The only thing, we'd have to have a temporary right of way to go across your property. I couldn't send a contractor across there. That's how we do it when we have to make connections.
They got steel plates.
Yeah, we just have to have a temporary easement in order for the contractor to build that.
All that they are seeking thus far is the easement described on this map. If it would be their contractor who would go outside that easement area to dig a trench wherever. What they're asking for, not if it's unreasonable, is that we would give them a temporary easement for that contractor to take his equipment over our land outside of the easement that they're requesting. That I don't see as a major problem.
To answer your question, it would be a lot more costly because the contractor has to pay prevailing wage rates.
Exactly.
So it would be much more cost effective for all of us if it was put in afterwards by a private contractor that did not have to pay the prevailing wage rates.
But you know, if we go up through there digging with just a backhoe and we run into something a little rougher that an excavator can handle, the excavator's going to go through it easier than where the backhoe will. Am I not right?
Yes, that's true.
Are you in a position to tell us that you will compensate us for the cost of getting the hook in, or something that would appease this side of the council?
If that would appease council, I will basically, you can put a condition in your motion, and I would have to have that approved by my board. Like,
we could grant a conditional right-of-way, conditioned upon the board, as Mr. Henry said, approving whatever the request might be. If it's covering the cost of the installation of that line, then so be it. But it would be, if they don't approve it, then our approval of the easement would become null and void.
And to confirm what you said earlier, it's not in here, but you said that we would get about the pole building, we're permitted.
The pole building language is right in the easement. It is there. The only thing that's not there from the discussion we've had is any language requiring or requesting that the Unity Township Municipal Authority cover the cost of both labor and materials for the installation of that service line for about 200 feet. That's not in there. Okay? But if it is council's desire, the right-of-way, grant of the right-of-way can be approved conditional upon that being approved by UTMA. We just wait and see what happens.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
So what are we voting on here?
We are actually, at this point, just voting on the motion to reconsider. If the vote is a positive vote, then we would bring up the motion again to grant the right-of-way and easement and go through the motion one more time. Yeah, we're just voting now to reconsider.
Reconsider. Okay.
And there is a proper motion and second.
You made the motion and Mike made the second.
Okay, any?
Just a simple motion, you don't need a roll call, just all in favor.
Okay, all in favor just to reconsider?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Now, the motion is back on the table, and that motion would be as previously made to grant the easement to the Unity Township Municipal Authority.
Conditional easement.
We're talking about.
Conditional upon the UTMA approving covering the cost of installing the, I'll call it the service line for that 200-foot, give or take, distance, covering the cost of labor and materials. Just so that it's at their cost.
Madam Mayor, my concern, and I don't wish to appear as if I'm standing in the way of the Unity Township Municipal Authority, but I think that my personal feelings are this, that in many instances we're required to cement in sewer lines, especially when they go through areas that are subject to heavy traffic. And I can cite Unity Street, and I think that the sewer line is fully cemented in on Unity Street here in Latrobe, and we had to do that when they rebuilt the bridge, or lowered the underpass. The other thing I think that makes this a difficult situation is that the council is considering the leasing of the transfer station, and I think that if the township would agree to cement the sewer line in and allow us to construct whatever we wish over that line, then I certainly would be in favor of it, even though I don't vote on it. But the consequences of that construction would have to remain with the Unity Township Municipal Authority. And I think under those circumstances, I personally, although I will not vote on it, I personally feel that that would suffice. It's going to be a little costlier and we'll get no money from it, but I think that we will have the ability to do with what we want with our, with our transfer station.
Well, now I'm glad you brought that up, because that was part of my concern. We were talking, before about if we talk about do the leasing. So I'm glad you brought that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Could you?
Well, the only thing I can address, and Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong, in the agreement, the municipal authority is responsible for the operation and maintenance of that line. And we will install it for the recommendations of a professional engineer. in regards to loading across the line.
Yeah, we would not recommend concrete encasing the plastic line.
You wouldn't recommend it?
We would not recommend it.
Why?
It's a flexible pipe that's in there that can move. When you concrete encase a pipe such as that for that long a distance, it can't move, it becomes rigid. So it's not a recommended design. You could go to ductile iron pipe, something different, a different type of pipe. We could work with Public Works with something such as that. I don't recommend concrete encasing long sections of pipe. You put this type of sanitary sewer pipe is put underneath state highways all the time, and they're not concrete encased.
Let's trust the judgment of the expert here. Has there ever been any plans, has there ever been any buildings on where this line is to be?
No.
No.
And it's right along a road.
And if we were, by some stretch of the imagination, to lease this transfer station, the lessor would be well aware of the conditions of the property which he is about to lease. So let's take this all into consideration. Let's cast aside our differences and approve this. I urge this council to do that, please.
Anybody else?
Madam Mayor, I want to clarify something with Joe before I indicate what motion is currently we're voting on. Joe, when we're talking about that 200-foot service line, that goes where? To the compactor, to the...
No, that would be the garage transfer station itself.
Okay, service line to the garage transfer station. Give me a second here.
It's highlighted on the map beside you there, Mr. Kelly.
Okay, the motion then would be, and I'll just read it in its entirety. I move we adopt the resolution to be read by the solicitor granting a sanitary sewer line easement to the Unity Township Municipal Authority, conditioned upon the Unity Township Municipal Authority covering or paying the cost of installation, labor, and materials of the 200-foot service line to the garage/transfer station.
I'll make that motion, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Wolford, second.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Ballmer. I'm sorry, who was first?
I was.
Thank you.
Same resolution as read before.
This is resolution 2012-48. Mrs. Wolford.
Yes.
Mr. Baldner.
Yes.
Mr. Forage.
Yes.
Mr. Scapora.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanangelo.
Yes.
Mr. Jim.
I abstain.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Vote is 6 yes, 1 abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Greatly appreciate it.
What are you supposed to do now?
Tell me what you're going to do, Mike, as far as saving Latrobe if they want to put a building over it. What are you going to do?
If they want to put a building over it,
Yeah.
it's written in the agreement, basically a full building that will go over the lot.
Okay.
If it's another structure, we'll just have to take a look at it to make sure it doesn't, basically, is detrimental in regards to the sanitary sewer located there.
And are you going to put some sort of, what kind of covering will you put on it if you don't use a concrete encasement? Are you using a special line of any sort?
Well, we'll put, in the area that is currently grass, the standard specification is a PVC pipe is 6 inches of 2D gravel underneath, a foot over top. Across the area that you have paved in front of, across your property there in front of the compactor, that will be 100% stone, and that will be compacted, and whatever paving is there, we will replace that with that type of paving. All right, thank you. We'll leave some prints here.
They have an extra copy, please.
Thanks, Council, for getting it ready done.
Okay.
right.
Mr. Kelly, may I ask for expediency's sake, if you could just read the title of the ordinance?
Oh, I do not plan to go through this ordinance in any
And
way.
it's not,
Thank you.
Ken's a little under the weather.
We are now one under administrative fine.
We are back to subsection A, first item. And that is an ordinance which has been properly advertised, and as I indicated to Mr. Baldneri, I will read by caption only. It is ordinance number 2012-9, and the caption or title reads amending chapter 256 of the Code of Ordinances of Latrobe Vehicles and Traffic, section 256-56, schedule Roman numeral 10, off-street parking facilities, section 25657, schedule 11, parking rates, section 25658, schedule 12, permit parking rates, and schedule 25659, schedule 13, fines for illegal parking. The current rates and the newly designated rates are set forth in the ordinance. The ordinance has been advertised and available for public inspection at the City Secretary's office and at the Adams Memorial Library. The motion will be to enact the ordinance as outlined by the solicitor.
May I have a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I so move.
Mr. Baldner, second. Mr. Spapor, any questions or discussion?
Mayor, I'd like to.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment that, first of all, that the residents between Ligonier and Alexandria Street on the south side of Alexandria Street be exempted from paying the parking at the meters, or the meters be removed. Secondly, I'd like to include in that motion that the fine for overparking at a meter be decreased to $5 rather than $10, and that the $3 fine remain in effect for 24 hours, and if the fine is not paid within 24 hours, then it would go to $5. Thirdly, I'd like to have the parking fines reduced at the hospital. But I'm going to leave that one off because that could be more controversial than the other two, but those are my two motions that I would like to make, or amend the ordinance. That's reduce the fine to $5 after 24 hours and exempt the property's residents from slugging the meters between Ligonier and Alexandria Street on the south side of Spring.
Are those two separate motions or one motion for
That's
two
one.
amendments?
One motion.
Thank you.
We need a second to that motion.
Do we have a second? Anybody want a second that? Second? No?
Okay.
Yeah,
Second has been requested 3 times.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce the fine from $10 to $5.
May I have a motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. That's the amendment, right?
If there's discussion, there can be discussion had on that. Otherwise, we would be voting on the amendment first.
Any discussion on that?
Marty, how you guys feel about that? You want to keep it at 10?
You know, based on what I've seen in other communities, that's not out of the question.
Mike, you're saying $5 for the first 24 hours and $10 after that. Is that
Well, actually, I was saying $3 for the first 24 and then
just amended the
The amendment I just understood was $5.
That's what I understood.
$5 period, Mike.
Oh, $5 total.
The first amendment he had was 2-part, and we didn't get a second. The second amendment was just go from 10 to 5, is the way I understood it.
Everything else is.
That would be my amendment.
Everything else is saying just from 10 to 5.
Correct.
Let's keep in mind that the higher the fine, the more acutely aware the parkers in this town will be to paying for their parking.
Mr.
If the fine is lower, they'll take the chance. If it's higher, there's less likelihood for them to take the chance of not paying for their parking. And we can't have that.
I would be more favorable to a 5 and 10, 5 in 24 hours, 10 overall.
5 in 72 hours.
Richard. Okay, well, we've got,
We got the amendment, this amendment on the.
we have the amendment. Okay.
So you need a.
Well, Mr. Baldoneri has made his colloquy here, and the only thing I can say is that I don't know, we don't live in Indiana, and I know that Greensburg's quite a big city, and their maximum fine is $5, so I don't see any reason for us to be going initially to the $10 fine. Yes, if you want to punish somebody that doesn't pay within 24 hours, then you go to the $10 fine. But I think it's unconscionable, especially, I don't even know Mr. Baldoneri, Madam Mayor, how often he comes downtown and parks. I don't have any idea. I'm there every day, and the people are disgusted. They are very mad about this fine, these fines. And we ought to listen to the public in this regard.
Alex, how many hours are meter may get?
Right now, we're putting about 25 to 30 hours of enforcement on the street a week. Just to be clear, on a current ticket in Latrobe, it's $3 for over parking. After 24 hours, it goes to $5. The way the ordinance is proposed is before you, is that the over parking fine would go from 3 to 10, but you would have 72 hours to pay it. In other words, you would have a total of 3 days to come up with $10 to meet your fine. Again, the way it currently reads is $3 for over park. After 25 hours, it goes to $5. And then after like a 72 hour, it goes up again, another increment. So just to get, to make that clear, that's the little nuance. I think the motion that you've made is $5 for over park. After 24, it goes up to 10.
That wasn't my understanding of his amendment.
Right, his motion was a fine from $10. For $5. Then it would be.
Then what?
Under the motion, then it would be $5 for 72 hours. Then it jumps to 30. If you don't pay it within 72 hours.
Again, we're referring, if you want to follow this is on page 4 and 5 as proposed. And again, you can see the way it currently is, $3 for over park, $5 if it's not paid within the 24 hours. Then after 72 hours, it goes up to $10. That's the way it currently is now. And so what we were saying was, again, the proposal was go to $10 and you have up to 72 hours to pay. After 72 hours or 3 days, then it would go up to $30.
Richard, you think that makes a big difference?
All right, so we just decide on the amendment, which is 10 to 5.
Yeah, that's what's 10 to 5, all right.
Skip and I are just looking at the Tim Haas recommendations that council requested. They had parking prohibited $15 to $25. And expired meters, their recommendation was 24 hours. That's the old one. This is the new one. 48 hours would go to $15. We're saying 10. 72 hours, $25. And there deters users from gambling if they will get a ticket, still encourage prompt payment. That was their recommendation. 15 to 25. We're talking 5 to 10.
Okay, we have to vote on Richard's amendment. Motion for that, right?
I guess my amendment is to raise the fine to $5 from $3. Is that how you have it, Barb?
You originally said the $10 that's proposed to only $5
Right.
instead of saying $10.
By decreasing the 10 to 5, that would place the fine at $5 for 72 hours under the ordinance.
Up to 72.
Up to 72
Right.
hours. And after 72, it would jump from 5 to 30.
Oh, but I don't know if Richard was even looking at the next one.
No, I did not realize there was a second escalation.
Well, there is
All in
no,
the ordinance.
That's number
Recommend council
2.
read the budget, they can't do bad.
It's going to 30. I personally.
Papers you got last month.
You know what? I have a stack of papers about this thick, and really to plow through those, it's an enormous task. And I do know that it will help me out here. I don't think the fine should be as much as that is proposed, even those that are proposed by this consultant that we hired. How much did we pay him? $80,000 to do this?
no. That's a myth that's been going around for a long time, and I really,
Madam Mayor, how much did we pay him?
That parking study was, well, total, because you had a couple other things done. Yeah, it wasn't 14 altogether, 13,080.
but not all of that was just parking.
No. It covered all the different aspects of parking, not just fines.
So, what's the amendment?
Yeah,
What's the amendment,
Richard? Richard, what's your
So we can
amendment?
vote on it.
The current amendment is to reduce the amount set forth in the ordinance from $10 to $5. The net effect is that it would reduce the amount of the fine for the first 72 hours from $10 to $5. That's the amendment that we have seconded. Nothing more.
It's a motion, so you need a hand vote.
Right. We have a motion, second.
So you just brought the fund not just to $5, Richard, but after 72 hours, it's right back up to 30.
You have to.
That's a little too high, I
Okay,
think.
all in favor of Richard's amendment to $5?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just 4.
Abstained?
You're not voting?
The amendment failed.
Thinking, Rosie.
Oh, we already voted.
No, I
It
didn't.
doesn't matter.
All right.
There was 4 no's, so.
All right.
You're off the hook, Fed, from making a decision.
We are back to the ordinance now as drafted and presented.
Okay.
So now we're back to the original motion.
We're on the original
Original
motion.
ordinance, yes.
We have a motion and a second. Any more questions or discussion? Okay, Bart.
Yes.
Okay, now we're voting. This is ordinance 2012-9. Mr. Giovanangelo.
Fabian, we're voting.
Mr. Giovanangelo.
Short.
Yes.
Mr. Jim.
No.
Mr. Forish.
Yes.
Mrs. Wolford.
Yes.
Mr. Baldneri.
Yes.
Mr. Scapora.
Yes.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes,
Vote is 6 yes, 1 no.
motion carried.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the next item on our agenda is item A2, which is also a resolution, and it reads approving agreement with Westmoreland County Transit Authority. Basically, I'm not going to read this one either. It goes for fiscal year 2012 and ends in June 30th, 2013. Our annual contribution has been, I believe, increased slightly to $923. I think it was $800 and some last year. And it's the standard resolution to adopt the agreement, which otherwise is the same as in years before.
May I have a motion?
I so move, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Baldner, a second.
I second, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Forish. Questions or discussion? Bart? This is resolution 2012-49. Mr. Baldner.
Yes.
Mrs. Wolford.
I abstain.
Mr. Scapora.
Yes.
Mr. Jim.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanangelo.
Yes.
Mr. Forish.
Yes.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes,
Vote is 6 yes, 1 abstain.
thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of council, the next item comes under the Public Works Department and is the first item. It is a simple motion, and it reads, I move we authorize the city manager or his designee to solicit through advertising bids for a 5-year residential and commercial municipal waste contract. That is the motion.
May I have a motion?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Ms. Wolford, second.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Baldner, any questions or discussion?
Is that waste contract to include the leasing of the transfer station?
No. That's not how the motion reads, to include that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Yeah, good
Do
hand.
it.
So I can see.
Okay.
Now, these are all the no's?
No.
Noes? Madam Mayor, members of council, the next item is, I'm looking, what we would call the MS4 ordinance. It is item number 300, Public Works. Again, I'm just going to highlight the ordinance itself. It's enactment of City of Latrobe MS4 prohibited discharge ordinance, whereas federal and state regulations require certain municipalities to obtain a permit for stormwater discharges from their separate stormwater systems under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, whereas permittees are required to enact, implement, and enforce prohibition of non-stormwater discharges to the permittees' regulated small municipal stormwater systems, and whereas the City of Latrobe now desires to enact an MS4 prohibited discharge ordinance, now therefore be it enacted and ordained. Section 1, the City of Latrobe does hereby enact the City of Latrobe MS4 prohibited discharge ordinance attached hereto and incorporated herein as referenced as Exhibit A, and Section 2, that the mayor, city manager, city secretary, and any other proper city officer are authorized and directed to take all action and to sign all documents necessary to carry into effect the provisions of this ordinance. Section 3 states that any provision of the ordinance conflicting or inconsistent with the provisions of other ordinances is repealed. And Section 4, that the within ordinance shall become effective on the date of post-enactment passage of the same, enacted and ordained this date. The motion, the actual MS4 ordinance is attached to the enacting ordinance, and the motion would be to enact the ordinance as outlined by the solicitor.
We have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Spore, second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Stephen Angelo. Any questions or discussion? Questions or discussion?
Madam Mayor, how do we fall under that act now?
Everybody keeps changing their minds.
Okay, Mr. Ford.
How do we fall under this act now, Mr. Kelly, do you know?
How do we, what, Mr. Ford?
Where do we lie right now underneath this act, or is this a new act?
It's a new act. Yes, it's something that now requires us to have in place this type of an ordinance. We've been partially following it, I'm sorry. I said we've been partially following it in the past. There's a provision, for example, that any disturbance of land greater than an acre, or actually 5,000 square feet, would be referred to the Conservation District for them to issue a permit. That's something we've been doing already. That's part of the ordinance. What this ordinance does do is it has some other provisions in there. For example, if greater than 1 acre of land is disturbed and there is a maintenance plan for stormwater, that plan has to be recorded up at the Recorder of Deeds office. That's something that's basically new. Any easements that may be required for future maintenance have to be granted by the property owner and also recorded. So there are some new overlays to procedures we've already been following. And as our city manager points out, we're mandated to have the ordinance in any event. Okay?
Any other questions, discussion?
Thank you.
Okay, Mark.
This is ordinance 2012-10. Mr. Scapora.
Yes.
Mr. Jim.
Yes.
Mr. Forage.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanangelo.
Yes.
Mr. Baldner.
Yes.
Mrs. Wolford.
Yes.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Vote is 7 yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
The next item appears under the police department, and it is a resolution entitled Establishing a Handicapped Disabled Veteran Van Accessible Parking Space in John Street. And before I just outline the resolution, I might add, this is being requested by the Unity Parks and Recreation Board they are required to have a van accessible parking space within a certain distance of their recreation facilities down at the mortar at the Legion King Park. Basically, it states now therefore be it resolved that a handicapped disabled veteran van accessible parking space on John Street to be established at a location to be determined by the Director of Public Works, which said space shall satisfy the Americans with Disabilities Act parking requirements for the Latrobe Community Parks and Recreation Commission, being the same is hereby designated as a handicapped disabled veteran van accessible parking space. If the need of said van parking space is no longer required in the future, then in that event it shall cease and terminate upon agreement between the city and the Latrobe Community Parks and Recreation Commission. And Section 2, the appropriate city officers are hereby authorized and directed to take all steps necessary and place all proper signage to carry into effect this resolution. Section 3, this resolution will become effective immediately. Result in council of this date, the motion would be to adopt the resolution as outlined by the
Motion.
I made that motion, Madam Mayor.
Ms. Wolford, second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Giovanangelo, any questions or discussion? Okay, Barb.
This is resolution 2012-50. Mr. Jim?
Yes.
Mr. Scapora?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolford?
Yes.
Mr. Giovanangelo?
Yes.
Mr. Baldneri?
Yes.
Mr. Forish?
Yes.
Mayor Griffin?
Yes.
Vote is 7 yes. Motion carried.
Madam Mayor, members of council, well, we have something in between. We have unfinished business, but under new business, I have a motion.
Are we on unfinished business? What did you say?
I have a motion for new business. But
For unfinished business? I have something in unfinished business.
You're first. Ladies first.
I want to know, I'd like to know what the plan is going to be for this garbage thing. You guys keep voting against it. Alex has talked to more experts, Ellen Keefe from Ellen Keefe from Westmoreland Cleanways, Michelle Nestor, who has been doing this for 20 years from what I understand. I mean, this has been going on for months. You guys vote no, but you don't say, what do you want? What do you want?
At the last agenda session, the option was Alice was going to see what I heard, if we could get an extension on the current contract so we could get the proper and timely analyzation of what our business opportunity is at the transfer station. But it's going to take a little time to do that. In order to do it properly, we need a few more weeks or months to get that done.
I guess I just need direction then. If you were directing me to ask Republic Allied Ways for an extension, I would need that direction. Currently, we have an extension through December of 2012. I don't think that's enough to do the proper analysis, have the council do the vetting of that analysis, get the bid documents out, and be able to turn around a contract by January 1. So that I would need direction to go back to Allied Republic to ask for an extension of time into 2013.
Madam Mayor.
That's what I understood.
But I don't know that that's what I'm sure that we decided that's what we want.
Madam Mayor, we have authorized Alex Graziano to seek an extension, and I think it's in the minutes of the meeting. That was part of the motion. Yeah. So you are authorized to negotiate for an extension.
Till the end of the year.
We have a 3 month extension.
That's not enough time.
That's not enough time. If you all read my email, this is an issue that requires deep analysis. We can't do this. We have 3 bidders on this. Only one is interested in leasing that transfer station. So what we're doing, we're weighting these bids in favor of the one bidder who is interested in leasing that transfer station. I think this is unfair to the other 2 bidders. It's unfair to the taxpayers, the citizens of this town. And what if our current hauler decides not to extend his contract? What are we to do then with the waste and the garbage in this town? What if they decide not to extend their contract? Has anybody thought of that?
And in addition to that, if you've read any of the emails from Michelle, she basically says that in all the providers that she's talked to, if anyone's interested, they're interested in a lease with the option to buy. So that means we're not going to be able to lease this thing for 30 years or 15 years. They want to lease with an option to buy. And to make that kind of a decision in a 3 to 6 months time frame is very, very irresponsible. Because there's so many factors that we don't know that, and that's if you had nothing else to do. It's not like Alex doesn't have anything else to do besides spend all his time figuring out how much the transfer station's worth. I just think we're acting extremely irresponsibly, and we sit here in these meetings and you guys vote no, but we don't know why. We don't even know how to fix the problem because what are you going to do? So what's your suggestion? Other than this transfer station, other than leasing the transfer station?
Michelle, I talked to Alex about this, and Michelle said that it'd be a good thing to look into. You should look at all your options and stuff like that. And she said she could probably put something together in 3 months. And Alex, when you talked about that, and you was in agreement with what she said and stuff like that. And you said you're looking 1 year to 2 years, but she said she can have something together like that.
It's not what her email said to me this week.
I showed Alex already the amount she said that. But you know, we're talking about it, and Mr. Molinari said, you know, let the experts do the decision making here with the sewage. Now, we don't want to let her do her job.
She told us.
She just finally got all her information because you were not giving her information over the last 6 months.
I got an email from her this week. I read it. It said, no one's going to buy, no one's going to lease that thing and interested in leasing in it unless we're willing to sell it. And we've never sat here and said we were willing to sell it. And it's not a decision we can make in 3 to 6 months time frame.
We should let her do her job, what we got her to do.
Only if she gives you the answer you want. That's the only way, baby, because she's already told us.
That's just what you just did here with the sewage. You know, you cried and everything else. You're pouted over there. You made look dirty, looks at everybody.
You have offered no solutions to any of the problems set forth.
We want her to do her job. Let her do her job. She's fine getting information. Fine.
She told you don't like her answer. She's only doing her job if she gives you the answer that she wants. Why are you so intent on designing a bid around one bidder?
Hey, you guys, Mr. Boomar came up here and gave a name and everything else. A year ago, I think it was. And I remember you guys saying you wanted to look into this lady.
We wanted to look into the proposal and what it was all about. We had no idea. All I'm saying now is we have time. We don't have time to make this kind of you're going to make a decision that's going to impact the community for the rest of its life, and you want to make it like that. You want to throw it on at the end of a bid. You want to take a couple of months to make a decision on something like that, and that's irresponsible. And it makes me mad, Fabi, because you just say no, but you don't come up with any solutions.
I just did. I think we all looked into the transfer station with it all.
She already told.
I give up. Didn't you read what she wrote? Like, obviously.
We're right here to vote now or something like that.
I never read anything from
what?
I didn't get anything.
You're on the email list.
Of emails, Mike.
I didn't get any.
She said nobody would want to lease that for more than 5 years. She talked about leasing it 5 years at best.
And then we'd have to sell it.
And then what? And then where are we?
I just don't know where this came from all of a sudden, and why it's so important that we have to hurry up and do it now. It doesn't, there's something, this doesn't make sense.
Isn't part of the Delta developments was to give us a citywide look for a 5-year plan, including sanitation? I haven't seen that from Delta Development yet.
The study was to look at really as it relates to the specific transfer station as a business enterprise. In other words, its revenue, true cost, and its expenditures, true cost.
Do we have that from Delta? Yeah.
We did not have that in hand, no. It would have to be an amendment really to the scope to analyze the lease options. To begin with, again, and again, I'm just saying the current agreement we have with Delta doesn't include scope items to analyze the permit's leasability, for example, or to what extent the DEP would be willing to go with us down that road, for leasing. Issues related to liability of a lease agreement. Again, these aren't issues that aren't overcomable, but these aren't something we've directed Delta to look at. What we asked Delta was to come up with a true picture of what that transfer station does, both in its expenditures and its revenues.
And that picture would tell us in a down the road plan, how much money we're gonna be expected to expend to upgrade the trucks, the facilities, or anything, how much, what we're looking at and putting into cost, what we would be looking at a proposed cost to put into keep it current.
They analyze.
I think it would also, but I think it would also look at the transfer station as a possible revenue generating source going forward and how we develop it so that it brings in more money. I mean, part of this analysis has to be, does it make more sense to lease it or to hire another person or two? All those numbers have to be done. And also, so I agree that needs to be done, but that takes time, and if you're going to do it right and answer all the questions, I don't think we need to rush this in with the garbage contract. This garbage contract is by the, what, it was due January, we postponed it, this is the third time, we're asking for a fourth extension. I mean, it's ridiculous. Why we have to tie this into this now? Do a 3-year garbage contract, do a 5-year garbage contract, and then take the next 3 to 5 years. That's not a long-term plan to figure out what you want to do with the revenue generating source like the transfer station. That's not a long time when you're trying to manage a city and turn it around.
Madam Mayor, my problem with the garbage contract again is the size of the totes. I mean, I have a problem, I'm sorry, but I do have a problem with the way the contract is written, the garbage contract. I don't like it, I don't think it suits the citizens, and I don't think people will like it. I don't think our residents will like it. If
They'll love it.
no, they won't. Now, Mr. Baldinari was here last month, and he said that his daughter uses a 95-gallon tote, 96 every week. It turns out that that's every other week.
No, that's the recyclables.
The recyclables.
96 gallons.
The recyclables. This contract calls for a 95-gallon. Are you going to let me finish? Are you going to let me finish?
Go ahead, Richard. Go ahead. Go ahead.
If you have a headache, no. If you have a headache,
you're missing the point. You don't have to take that 96-gallon recyclable tote out to the curb until it's full. I would probably take me 6 months to fill up a 90, so I take it out twice a year.
Well, why are we buying a 95-gallon? In other words, that's the other problem. I see that. Also, I think the bulk items.
Richard, it's cheaper if we pick one size than if we have multiple sizes.
It's 65. It's 65 gallon. That's what we settled on, the 65 gallon.
No, you did not. You put a 95 on the recyclable.
It's 65. You have the option to either pay for stamps or go for a 96-gallon garbage bin. It's a 65-gallon recyclable.
Well, they both should be 65.
It's what it is.
No, one is.
Currently, the way the bid has been presented to council is on the residential recycling, 65-gallon would be the standard, with each customer having the choice to choose a smaller 35-gallon or a larger 95-gallon as represented in the back of the room. On the waste side, the customers of Latrobe would have the choice to currently purchase stickers, and they may choose to throw out 1 bag a month, 1 bag a week, or a couple bags a week, or they may choose to get a 95-gallon tote. So for example, somebody might choose a 35-gallon recycling container and just buy stickers. And they might buy 1 sticker every 2 weeks, and they might throw out that 35-gallon every 2 weeks because they don't fill it up every week.
Does the contract allow a resident to choose a 35-gallon?
No waste, only recycling.
On recycling?
All they have is one
on
choice.
Waste, they could use the best.
Why can't you get the same thing for recycling? That's my question.
You have the choice related to bags.
Pardon?
You have the choice.
On recycling I'm talking about. Why can't we allow our residents to have a 35-gallon recycling container?
Recycling, they do.
And more 65.
Correct.
And that is in the contract?
Yes.
All right, well, you can show it to me tomorrow if you would.
For recycling, yes, but for waste, it's either 96 or you can use the current waste.
Well, that I disagree with. I think it should be you, but you do have the option for a 65 for waste.
Everybody would receive a postcard saying you will have a 65-gallon recycling container delivered to your house unless over the next like 15 to 30 days you choose to tell the hauler you want a 35 or 95. That's what you'll get delivered to your house. Again, back to the waste side, the standard option is bags. And then you would tell the contractor, no, instead of bags, I want a 95-gallon toter delivered to my house.
My question is, can you get a 65?
No.
Well, see, that's where I differ. I'm not talking about that. Let's say that I do want a 65 or a 35.
Then why wouldn't you just do
Why will you allow them to choose the size for recycling and not allow the customer to choose the size for the garbage?
The state of Pennsylvania, under Act 101 recycling, incentivizes cities of our size to do recycling. So it's kind of an easier way to get toters out in a mechanized.
I understand that. But why, again, why would you allow that? Why would you do a 95 and you can choose whatever size you want for recycling and not allow the residents to choose either a 35, a 65, or a 95 for garbage?
It has been the practice of this city to use stickers. The choice then remains to continue under the current practice in stickers, and for those who want to have a toter to have that one larger size.
So you
If the council would like to direct.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, let's say I want to get a 65-gallon recycled tote and a 60.
It's not a perfect world. You have maybe if we got rid of the bag system,
So
we could have.
what are we to do about this garbage going through?
Yeah, what do you guys
Yeah, what do you propose?
We're on the outside here.
I was just gonna look into, see if we can get it suspended.
And we're not gonna be satisfied until you get the answer that you're looking for. She already told you, based on her email.
You already got it, Alex, to go ahead and go look at it.
Alex can check and have a meeting with the committee.
And how quickly should this?
Who is the committee, by the way?
You,
I'm not on the committee anymore. I resigned from that committee.
Mr. Jim, Mr. Stephen Angelo.
We'll do it.
And how quickly should this leasing study be completed?
And how much is it gonna
So
cost?
about what, 3 months you said?
You think we can do that in 3 months?
It's not part of the initial plan. Alex said it's not part of the initial plan
So we have
to pay more money for that.
What I'm saying is to vet some of the options related to the legalities of leasing it. We did not ask Delta to do that. We did ask Delta to do a cost, analysis related to is it A, losing money, B, breaking even, or C, making money. Back to Councilman Walford's, we also asked them what would it do to enhance it? In other words, if it's losing money, what do we got to do to get it to break even and or make money? And if it's making money, what can we do to have it make more money? Back to Mr. Bush's quote, if it is a goose laying golden eggs, we want more. We want to enhance that. In order to do that, is a long-term plan of equipment investments and other kinds of strategic decisions. We didn't ask them to explore all the options related to the legalities and the nuances of leases. And that would be a modification of scope and would come with some cost. What I've heard is the direction would be to seek an extension of the current agreement beyond December 31st, 2012. At the same time, determine the cost of analysis. If you recall back, whether it's the state store or the state leasing of the turnpike, what they did in both of those cases, or what they would normally do, is have another party assess the valuation of the asset. And I don't know who does that for transfer stations. Michelle may be the one who does that, or we may have to entertain somebody else's ability to assess that. And again, there's just a number of questions that are going to take a lot of time.
And I wonder, how long do you think Allied is going to be willing to continue to extend a contract without any kind of an increase? I mean, what happens if they come back and say, yeah, we'll extend it, but we need 5%? Because let's face it, they've already given us a year with no.
It has been signed and delivered by both parties.
That's December of 12.
So you have that now?
I have an extension through December 31st, 2012.
But our next meeting is in October, so that doesn't give us a whole lot of time.
Well,
Mr. Fabian and I think can meet Saturday morning and go over the contract and the potential leasing of the station or the sale thereof.
Yes.
And we'll go from there. If you want to be with us, you can. Alex?
I think Alex should be there.
All right.
Anything more under new business, I guess? Under unfinished or new business, I am advised that the chairman of our Planning Commission, Mr. Ronald Weimer, has resigned for personal reasons, and typically we would accept the resignation with regret. And the motion reads, I move we accept with regret the resignation of Ronald Weimer from the Latrobe Planning Commission. I further move that we authorize the city secretary to advertise for applicants for this position.
May I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll make that motion with, as the solicitor said, deep regret. Mr. Weimer has been such an asset to this community and has worked tirelessly for many, many years on a voluntary basis, and I am really sorry to see him leave. We need more people like him, but I'll make that motion.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Baldner? Any questions or discussion?
I'd like to add more for discussion that maybe we could present some kind of citation or commendation to Mr.
Weimer for his tireless efforts that he's given to the city.
All right, I agree. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you.
My manager's report stands as written. There's a number of issues. One is the pay system for the parking garage. We're still waiting word from the governor's office related to funding for the parking garage. As Mr. Molina's reported about the elevator, one of the reasons why the elevator isn't installed is we had a change order in our favor for a deduct, which resulted in a savings for us, and so we had to order a different piece of equipment, which is one of the reasons why it's not installed. But I'm still hopeful that the governor will support the funding request that has come through the capital budget by Senator Kim Ward, and we're looking forward to that. We're currently, again, at the end of this year, we'll have a fraternal order police contract for the City of Latrobe's Police Department expiring, and we're negotiating a contract with them currently as we speak. And again, council members who are on that committee are invited to a meeting as alerted to on that. Other than that, you know, I'm available for comments. I think I know what it is we're looking for as it relates to direction for the residential waste and recycling commercial waste contract and or transfer station discussion. And you know, we might have to call for a special meeting to look at some of those issues. And then the last thing is related to professional development and my availability at the next council meeting, so you might want to note that on page 2. Are there any questions from council?
Alex, on your letter for our MMO, our
Yes.
minimum municipal obligation for pension,
Yes, sir.
by your calculations, it looks like we have a 57% increase in our MMO. It goes from roughly $209,000 to $329,000. What our portion of the pension payment?
That is correct. As every year annually, there's an analysis of both our public employees pension and our basically our police pension. And there's the MMO stands for minimum municipal obligation, and that is indeed increasing. Now, state aid at times will come and cover a portion of or all of that. We don't know what state aid will be made available. So while indeed it is increasing by that amount, theoretically the state aid may increase to cover the difference. But nonetheless, on the police side, we're required to make these contributions to, if you will, to make whole the pension for our police.
And these are defined benefit pensions, right? That's what this.
Correct. The government, for the most part, has a defined benefit pension system, whereas the private sector generally has a defined contribution pension system, typically what would be referred to as a 401k plan that is portable with the employee, the employer making a defined contribution. What we're basically have done under the pensions by municipalities is to define the benefit for perpetuity, or obviously till the person is passed.
But last year's MMO was $209,000, roughly $209,000. What the city was required to pay. Based on your calculations, we're looking at about $329,215 next year to pay. It's in a letter dated September 7th.
Sorry. That is correct. In 2007, the minimum obligation was $117,000, and going into this year, 2013, it's up to $329,000. So That gives you an idea, 117,000, 2007 to 329,000. Again, now, that's not to say that that's been exactly out of the city's pocket. Some of those years have been met by state aid covering the differences.
Which is still taxpayers' money.
Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor, I have a question concerning the parking garage. I noticed that we've had free parking, and I've observed that the top 4 or 5 levels have no cars. What's the average use of that garage with free parking?
I'm glad you've asked the question. We have an intern who is counting basically 9:30 in the morning and then later on in the afternoon between 2 and 3 p.m. The mornings are a little stronger, averaging about 85 cars currently.
85?
Yes, sir. In the evening, it's about 65, and it is increasing. Please get the word out that it is available. I noticed Dr. Ramsey ran an ad this past weekend. Welcome other business owners to promote its availability, but we're observing it and we're taking data. We're doing data collection to see where that curve is heading as the word gets out.
It's my understanding we have 300. By the way, I withdraw my request for 10-foot parking spaces because I think there's enough room in the garage you can park where your door home can hit.
There are 270 spaces if that's
270. And are we going to put a meter in front of each of those spaces? Because I know the meters are $450 or $500 each, and that would be close to $135,000 just to put meters in a garage that maybe is only going to use 85 or 65.
Hopefully this week, the Parking Authority, along with the city, will be advertising for a request for proposals for pay system technologies. And they are, the reason we're doing a proposal and not a bid is we want to allow the vendors to offer us various options and solutions that will be most cost effective. Whether it's a gated arm solution with pay stations or metered spaces, we haven't determined if we have enough money to afford which option and which is most cost effective. The advantages of the arm are obvious. You don't have to have a worker or an employee check every meter, and we don't have to manage those meters. We have to manage one pay system and gate.
The places that I've seen with the arms require quite a bit of maintenance and upkeep and a lot of difficulties, but my thoughts would be basically to not put any meters on perhaps the top 4 or 5 levels and make that for passes only, and only meter the lower levels, thereby saving money on the number of meters that you need.
That's certainly one of the options the Parking Authority will be taking into account.
Okay, the only thing I want to say is I just want to thank Ron Weimer for all he has done, and not going to find too many people who are nicer and do a job as well as he did, so I just want to thank him. Anything else? Okay. We have a motion for adjournment. Ms. Wolford, second. Mr. Support, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.